Alright, what's up guys? Just gonna go through my process for taking a photo here and take a look at mainly framing with a foreground and a background, and also use of the depth of field sliders, all of them, and then switch over to night and look at how to light up for a night shot. So in the beginning here, this is the perspective that the game drops you in, and right off the bat you can see it's a bit shit. Everything's all warpy and distorted, and your skater appears small and everything looks sort of Alice in Wonderland-ish. So I'll let the trick run here a little bit. You're going to see it just generally does not look very good in the game's default field of view. Also, want to find a good place for your photographer to be standing. So taking a look around the area where somebody might possibly be, I like to have a spot that would allow you to realistically be standing, and then also have some kind of obstacle or something that's going to appear in the foreground of the picture. So for this one, selected this spot over here next to this column. So doing a spot over here that's pretty far away enables me to get these obstacles here in the foreground and still have kind of an interesting background. But as you can see right now, positioned as it is, it looks shit and the skater is super small. So this is where you can back out even further and then go way in with your field of view. And when you do that, you can see all of that distortion and everything kind of went away, but still able to keep a frame of foreground around here to kind of make it seem like you're shooting from a real spot. From there, just adjusting the cam around and moving the skater forward and backwards a little bit in order to get him in a spot that's big enough to see what's going on, but not so zoomed in that he's the only thing that you see. See, I've kept the landing area in the frame. That way your picture kind of tells the story and you can see sort of what's coming up. Making just little minute adjustments now here to try to fill as much of the frame as possible with the skater, but keep the landing area and the foreground obstacles in view here. So right about here looks like a pretty good place for the field of view and for the cam placement and for the aim to get everything in the frame that I want. But as you can see, the foreground and the background are really distracting because they're still in complete focus. So this is where the depth of field tool really comes in handy. So open that up, and the first thing that you want to do probably is adjust your far. So bring your far slider all the way to the left, and what that's going to do is give you a really hard line between what's in focus and what's out of focus, so that you can move your far start slider around and get an exact idea of where things will go from out of focus to in focus. So moving it around here, you can see that line between focus and out of focus is really harsh. Just moving it back and forth, trying to find a spot behind the skater to put that hard line. So like right about here, but it's kind of ugly as it is like this because the out of focus line, if you look at the rail, is really sharp. You've got some of the rail in razor sharp focus, and then the rest of the rail almost disappeared because it's so blurry. So this is where your far end slider can be used to soften up the dividing line between in focus and out of focus. So going to the far end slider, you can see as I start moving it from left to right, the amount of harshness between focus and in focus can be adjusted that way. So you can also control the total amount of blur. So the further right you go with your far end slider, the more gradual the transition is between focus and in focus. So as you see here, now we've got the background blurred out, but not so much that you can't tell what it is, and that harsh line on the rail dividing focus and in focus has disappeared. So from there, it's just a question, since this block in the foreground is super distracting, this is where you want to use your near sliders. So first one you want to adjust is near end, and that controls how far away from the camera the blur effect will reach. So I want to push it out far enough that these stone features in the foreground get blurry, but not so much that I lose my skater. So sliding it back a little bit, right about there, you can see the blocks are a little bit fuzzy, but not quite as fuzzy as I want them to be. So that's when you go to your near start slider and slide it from left to right to increase the amount that your foreground is blurred out. So since I want these foreground obstacles to be even blurrier, bring that slider all the way out to the right, and you can see that softened up the ground in front of the camera and also this pillar block to the right of the camera. So close the graphics mod and you can see, based on that, background now decently blurred, foreground decently blurred, but they're both still visible, and you get a picture that sort of shows what's coming up for your skater. Next thing to do after that, get the exposure controller on, look what to do with lights, because you could be trying to shoot this at night. I think this probably is the thing most people aren't doing when it comes to lighting night photos. So getting exposure controller open here, turn it into dark, and obviously I have to do something to light it up because everything has disappeared. And the biggest thing I see on this is people open up the light and then just increase the intensity with the range and angle also both set up to high values. So if you look at this, adjusting the light bright enough to be able to see the skater clearly also makes the foreground extremely bright and distracting and ruins the whole photo. So what I like to do in this case is bring the brightness up to 1,000,000 and then bring the angle way down, so you get a little bit of a circle. And then using your X and your Y sliders on the light, put them using X to move left and right and Y to move up and down where you want most of the light to be. So here, putting it on my skater, trying to center it on the skater as much as I can, and then making it big enough that it covers the skater and a little bit of the surrounding area. Then as you can see, it's too bright. So now we've got a circle of light that covers up the skater pretty well and doesn't blast your whole foreground to where it becomes super distracting. But still don't like it because you've got this awkward partial circle of light on the pillar in the foreground here that's sort of unrealistic looking, because a flash wouldn't just light up one little part of the obstacle like that. So in this case, try to increase the angle to cover more of the area, so making the circle bigger basically. But if you can see here, that lit up the column base but not the ground, which is also not super realistic for what the flash would do. So this is when you can go back to your X and Y sliders again and sort of fine-tune how much of your foreground obstacles you see. So I've got too much of the column, so I want to slide my X slider left, but now I don't have any of the floor in the foreground, so that's when I'm going to bring my Y slider down to bring it down to cover up some of that ground that's immediately in front of your camera. So I've got a little bit of the column, and then I'll go down with the Y to also get a little bit of the stairs. So if you look now, I've got the floor in front and a little bit of the column, and I don't have that stupid looking partial circle of light blasted on there, but I've still got the skater in there as well. Last thing I noticed before finalizing this one is the skater really close to the top of the frame, so I'll go up a little bit as far as the aim so that his head's not skimming right across the top, but still going to leave him pretty high in the frame because sort of the subject of this photo is how high he is on the rail. So having him dead center in the frame wouldn't really tell the story of what's going on. So leaving him up high on the rail, foreground, background, in frame but blurred out so they're not super distracting, and lights all adjusted, so you end up with a fairly decent looking finished photo. And then nobody holds the camera perfectly straight, so that's why I've put that little bit of twist on it to make it look a little bit less game-like. And then you end up with a finished night photo.